The number one technical question that I get asked all the time is, how do I make sure that the AI automations that I build for clients don't break? Which is a completely valid question, considering that most of the AI agents and workflows that you see out there on YouTube, which look fancy, simply don't work. And so in this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 hacks that you can start implementing today to make sure that your AI agents and workflows are bulletproof, scalable, and actually production ready. And in case we haven't met, my name is Michele, and over the past 12 months, I've personally helped over 40 businesses implement AI and automations and taught over 20,000 people in the process, all starting with zero technical knowledge. With that being said, let's dive in. All right, so the number one most important thing that you have to do when you want to make your workflows or AI agents production ready is test. Test. Testing is the most important thing you have to do, because that way you can test it 10, 20, 100 times to make sure that when it goes to the client's accounts, it works and there's no errors. And so let's say we have a workflow like this, where we get the data from a webhook. In this case, it can be a form on the website where someone puts their name, someone puts their email, and then we want to send them an email directly or something else, right? But in this case, the actual automation starts with the webhook. So the question becomes, how do we test the webhook without having to fill out the form on the website every single time? Well, this is where we use a platform called Postman API. If you never heard of Postman API, it looks very complex. It sounds very complex. It actually is very, very easy to use. The first thing you want to do is go to postman.com. You want to make an account, and then you want to go to workspaces. You want to press create a workspace, press next, name it test n8n connection or whatever it is. Press create. And now this will create the actual organization or workspace for you. The next step you want to do is go here to plus, and this is where you create a new request. So a request, it's saying, hey, I'm going to put some test data on here, and I'll explain exactly what this is. But the test data is something that we can use every single time to test the automation. And so as you can see, the things that we have to fill out is the type of request. So get, post, put, patch, delete, head, and options, which you can also find here inside the webhook. Post, delete, get, head, patch, and put. And then we have to put the URL, which in this case is the webhook URL, because the webhook is just simply a link that can be accessed in the server. And then we also have the options to put parameters, authorization, headers, body, scripts, and settings. The ones that you really have to care about, honestly, is just headers and body, because simply the body is like the sauce of the actual request. Like, what is it that you're sending over? Is it a name? Is it an email? Is it a phone number? Whatever it is. And so to make a request, we can go here, we can copy this, the URL, make sure this is post, because that is the way that we want to get it. And then we want to go back, we want to paste this, make sure that this is also post, because they have to be symbiotic. They have to be the exact same type of request. We go to body, we put raw, because this is the actual data that we send to the webhook. And in this case, we can send the email and we can send the name of someone. And here we can write in JSON. And by the way, if you never used JSON before, just watch this video up here before moving forward, because it would make much more sense. But here we start writing the JSON. So 2 curly brackets, press enter, and then we can put name here. We can put Michele, Torti, and then we can put email, right? And so the email can be michele.torti5@gmail.com. And now with this in mind, what this will now do is it will send the information to this webhook in n8n, which again is in testing mode, and it will send the name and the email, right? And so now if I go back to n8n, I can disconnect this to this because there's an error here, so it will not work. I can press listen to an event, and here I can press send. So this will now send the information to the webhook. And as you can see here, the workflow has started, which means that everything was successful. And if I go back to n8n, I can see that we have the output. And don't worry about any of this. It doesn't make any sense. The important thing that you have to worry about is the body, which in this case is the name and the email, right? So this is testing that it actually works. And so the next steps, what we can do is we can attach this to Gmail. We can go here, we can connect our account, press resource message, operation, which is the action that we're sending, is send. And now we want to pull in the email here. The subject line can be welcome to the team, Michele Torti, here, boom. And then the actual body, let me pull this full screen. It can be, hey, pull in the name. And by the way, I know this is the full name, so let's split this by only the first name. And we can do this by having Michele Torti. And so the first step is splitting this by the space. So we will have 1 here, and we have 2 here, and then we'll get the first, which is this, right? So to do this, you can go here, press dot, split, there you go, by the presence of a space. As you can see, we have 2 different variables, Michele and Torti. And here we want to press dot first. Boom. So now we get Hi Michele. Cool hack. And then we could say, welcome to the team, excited to have you and looking forward to working with you. By the way, this is called Whisper Flow. So check it out. And then we put Michele, or actually just put James. There we go. So now if I want to test the automation and how it works, I can simply press execute workflow. So this is now waiting for the actual test request. We can go back to Postman. We can press send the data again. And this will continuously send the data over to the actual automation. And of course, this is only one step, but you can have 5, 6, even 20, 30 steps for your automation. But you can test the whole automation just by simply having this here and making sure that you have a way to test your automations from the start. By the way, if I go to my email, I can see that I have welcome to the team, Michele Torti. Hey, Michele, welcome to the team. Excited to have you and looking forward to working with you, James. Right? So we know that this works, but sometimes it could go wrong. Sometimes you could have a connection problem. So let's say I go here to create a new credential. I can press save. And this is a fake credential. So close. This right here shouldn't work. And now if I press execute workflow and you will test here, it will give me an error right here. It will say there's a problem within the node, unable to sign in without the access token. Right? And I know this because I was testing it. But without testing, there's no real way of actually knowing whether something works or something doesn't. All right, the second thing is actually making sure that you use the production URL when you go to production. This is something that most people still don't know, but the webhook in n8n, they made it unnecessarily complicated because I know make.com only has one URL that's for test and production, which is easier to know. But here, when you want to test your workflow, which means when this is not on, then you want to use the test URL, which is what we have been using for the past 10 minutes. But once you press this button right here, activate, you press got it. Now this will activate the automation, which means that we don't have to execute workflow every single time. It will automatically do it for us. But the problem is that if I keep using the test URL and I go here and press send, I get an error saying that click the execute workflow button on the canvas, then try again. In test mode, the webhook only works for one call after you click this button, right? Because of the fact that we turned this on, it doesn't use the test URL anymore. But if I go here and I turn this to production URL and I press go, I can now go back and I can paste this here. And if I press send, this worked, right? Because it's active. And if I go here to executions, which is all the executions of the actual automation, I can see that at 11:44, we can see that the actual automation ran successfully. And if I go to my email, I can see that I have a new email. Welcome to the team, Michele Torti, right here. And so if your webhooks have not been working in your automations, then well, this is why. The next one is actually within the authentication or the privacy within your automations. Because when you use a webhook, this URL is something that you can also use. As in, if you copy this and you use it, it works. And so I simply don't want that. And so what I do is if I go to authentication, which is basically setting a barrier between someone who wants to use it and someone who can use it. In this case, it would just be a password. I can go here to header auth and I can create credentials for header auth. Header auth is just authentication. It's basically saying, hey, let me put a username and password so that only people who have a username and password can use this webhook, right? And so I can go here, I can press create a new credential. You can name this test n8n or whatever it is. And here you can put the name and the value. This you can choose whatever you want. You can put username or you can put hello. And the value can be a password. Just make sure that no one knows this password. In this case, let's put hello 123. You can press save. And this has now set a header authentication. So now if I copy the test URL and I go here and I can just attach it for this, I can execute the workflow. I can then go back. I can paste this here. And now it should tell me that the authorization data is wrong, right? Which means that we're not authorized to use the webhook, which is amazing because if you want to deploy some sort of webhook for a company, you don't want everybody to use it. But on the other side, how do you not put the password so it actually does work? Which is where we go to headers. And for key, we can put hello, which is the one that we put. And for value, we can put hello 123. And now if I press send, this has now executed the workflow because we breached the barrier. We have the password. If I go here, I can see that we have the actual data, name and email. All right, so the next hack is going to be with a HTTP request. So sometimes when you go to n8n and you want to use an application within the automations, but you simply can't find it here. For example, if I want to use the weather API right here, I can search up weather API, but I can only find the open weather map, which is not the software that I want to use. And so in that case, you use a HTTP request, which is basically making our own application, which by the way, is much simpler than you think. And so here, if I go inside, I can see that I have to put a few fields. Now, the one thing you have to look at to make sure that you know what fields to put is called an API documentation, because it's a document that shows you, hey, here's the action that you want to take, and here's how to set it up. And so you have this long code right here that you can simply copy. and you can paste it right here to import curl, and you will have everything imported here. Now, the one thing that usually they ask you when you are setting up a request is some sort of password. Now, the password is usually called an API key, right? If you use OpenAI or Claude within your automations, then you know that you need an API key, because, or else I would be using your account, you would be using mine with no restrictions, right? It's sort of like a password that says, hey, this is my account and only use mine. And so right here, we have the type of request, we have the URL, we have the key, which is the API key, which is again, is a password that we need to use in order for the server to know, hey, this is our account. We have the queue, which is a location, and then we have the body, which is some other data that we send to the actual request to say, hey, it's from this place, gather this type of request or gather this type of weather, and so on. Now, the one thing here is that we have to put the API key every single time on the HTTP request. And the problem is that every single time that we have to do a weather API request in the automation, we have to keep adding the API key right here. Now, to make it safer and to make it more scalable, what we do is we add plus, we look for edit set node, and we add a field called API key, and you can name it whatever you want here. And then you want to paste the API key that we actually have, so that when we run this workflow, we can go here and we can simply replace this with the variable here, which will still work because now we still have the API key, but it is replaced by this variable right here, which we rename with API key, which is great because now every single time that we have a weather API right here, we can always refer back to the API key here. And the next few hacks are going to be within error handling, which means when something goes wrong, what do you do? Because most of the automations in AI agents not working is because it's what do you do when it does not work? What action do you take? What error handling technique do you use? And so here we have 5 different error handling techniques that we're going to talk about. The first one is retry when failure. So right here, I have a HTTP request, which when we go here to execute, we get a random picture of a dog looking for something, right? And so when we run this from the start, and where is the manual trigger? Let me just add it here. Trigger manually, there we go. When I run this from the start until the end, this works perfectly. But there are times where you run the actual request, and in that moment, maybe OpenAI or Claude or whatever it is, it simply doesn't work in that time. And so what you want to do is you want to rerun the actual request by the amount of times that you want. So what I mean here is, let's say we run this from the start until the end. This ran successfully, right? So we have the picture, another picture of a dog under a bed, and it says success. But let's say I added an extra F. If I go here to execute workflow, this will now fail, right? Because we added an extra F, and that is not valid within the actual request. And so if I go inside here and I go to settings, I can go down here, I can see that we have the retry on fail. So if I press retry on fail, we can see that I have max tries, wait between tries, and on error. Now we're going to focus just on these two. But what we're saying here is wait 1 second. In this case, this is milliseconds. So 1000 is 1 second, and try again. Wait 1 second, try again, and wait another second and try again, right? Because we're trying 3 different times. So this is the amount of times, and this is the interval between each time that it tries. And so now let's say I put 4000, so 4 seconds. If I run this, I can see that now it's waiting 4 seconds, then it's going to wait another 4 seconds, then it's going to wait another 4 seconds until it fails. It's because it's trying 4 times or 3 times at a 4-second interval, which is great when we have some sort of automations where we have AI or Claude or whatever, Gemini, whatever it is, that in that moment it might not work, which is why we use a retry on failure, which has this symbol right here, to try this many times in this interval. The second one is continue when failed. Now, if I drag this across here, so let me copy this and I can go here and I can attach this here. Cool. So continue when failed is mainly used when you have a step that for you, whether it succeeds or not, it doesn't really matter that much. You can still continue when it fails. And so here, if I go inside, we can simply turn this on. On error, so every time there's an error, you can just continue, right? And you can do this option right here. So here, now if I run this across, I can see that it ran successfully. But if I go inside, I can see that it was an error. It says access error, there's a 404, the error just, it didn't run, but it still told us that it was successful. And the reason why it failed is because we have an extra F here. If I take this off and I run this across, it succeeds again. And now it will give us the actual image of a dog. God damn. So there you go. And it says success. So the next one here is split error route. Now, split error route is used when you want to send the automation one way when it's successful and the other way when it fails. And so here we can run this, execute workflow, and this will go down the success path, because if I go inside, I can see that I have another picture of a dog. There you go. But now if I put an extra F here, it should fail, right? So execute workflow and it fails. And so if it fails, we then go to send ourselves an email, right? And the email in this case can be in our inbox, and it can say error, and it can give us the whole error as well. So we're always notified when there's an error happening. Now, this exact type of structure is something that I implemented in my human in the loop AI sales agent, which you can find up here. But it's essentially using the looping, right, technique, where if something happens, we send it one way, and we try again, and we try again, and we try again, until the next thing happens, or we go the next way, which is great because sometimes it simply doesn't work, which is where we can send a notification to our team, but sometimes it does work, right? And so either way, the automation still runs and it doesn't break, because here it didn't break, it didn't stop. All right, so the next one is called a fallback AI agent LLM. Now, the fallback AI agent LLM means that the AI agent is natively connected to its brain, which is the first chat model, but sometimes this doesn't work, either because OpenAI just trips out or because something else happens. And so now what we want to do is we want to set a fallback agent LLM, which you can do here by pressing this button, enable fallback model, which allows us to be able to use a different LLM, which in this case is Claude, when this doesn't work. So if I go inside here, I can turn this to a good credential. So just this, and I can go open chat and I can say, hello. And now this will talk to its first brain and it will give us an answer, which is, hello, how can I assist you today? But if I go inside the OpenAI and I just make something that I know will error out, if I put fail, which is a fake credential, this should now not work. So if I go here and I can say hello again, this will now error out and it will use the next LLM. Why? It's because it has a fallback LLM. And so that's why we use the fallback LLM when this doesn't work, which is great. And typically we want to use a different model, right? Because if OpenAI doesn't work, there's a good chance that if you put another OpenAI as a fallback model, it still doesn't work. All right, and the last one here is called an error workflow. So the error workflow is a workflow that we set up, which is one workflow separate to this, which basically receives all the notifications of every single error that we get inside of n8n. So then we can notify our team. So in this case, we have a workflow again, which in this case has an extra F, but let's do the no F. It will give us the actual link, dog, right here. And let's say we do put an extra F. So in this case, it should trip out. It should say, nope, not good, because this is not the right request. Now, if I go here and I create a new workflow, personal, so workflow from scratch, I can then put the error trigger. Triggers the workflow when another workflow has an error. So if I go here to error trigger, this will now, you should leave it like this. You can't activate this because it doesn't allow you to. You can press save and name this hello 123 or error workflow, whatever it is. I can go back to the actual workflow here. I can then go here to settings. I can then go to error workflow and make sure that the name is the name, which is hello 123. So what happens here? Whenever this fails, it sends a signal to that workflow, to the workflow here. And so now what I can do is I can press save. I cannot execute this because when I execute this manually, it does not send a signal. I have to activate this, which is why I have a schedule trigger. So now we're running the automation every 5 seconds. So now if I activate this, I say got it. And now this will run every single 5 seconds. And you should see every 5 seconds that we have an error. As you can see, more errors. And I can see here under executions that this succeeded because it got the actual error. So it got the URL of the workflow execution, which is the one in this workflow, right? So we are connecting each one to another. And if I go here, I can see the description. I can see some other stuff as well, right? We have a lot more stuff that we don't even need to know, but we have the stack, we have the message, we have the type of error, we have the workflow name, the ID of the workflow. We have a lot of stuff that we can then send to our team as reference saying, hey, this errored out. Why did it not work? Now let me press inactive because we will have a ton more executions that we will have to pay for. But now here we have all these executions. And if I go here, I can press copy to editor. And now this will bring it back here. I can see all the details and I can pin this top right. And now let's say we want to send an email to our team. So I can press Gmail, send a message, connect your account by going here, sign in with Google and so on. The email will be michele.torti5@gmail.com. Subject line can be error in, where's the workflow name? Workflow name. There we go, here. Error in, error handling in n8n, right? So we can see that we have an error in this workflow. The message in text can be, hey team, there was an error in the following workflow. We can get level of the error, which is warning. We can get the description here. We can get, what is it? The URL. So execution link. So they can go back to the execution link and they can obviously rerun it again with the same data. And then down here, you can also add the workflow name. There we go. Thanks, James. I don't know why I like James, but James. And finally, we can just execute the workflow. So every single time there's an error in any workflow that we have within n8n, it sends a signal here and it then sends us an email. If I go here, I can see the error in error handling n8n. I can see that we have the level warning, description, no route found for get this here, execution link. So I can go here to the actual execution of that warning of that workflow that errored out, which is this one here, with the workflow name, thank James. So now our team is notified when we have any errors. Now, the alternative to this would be adding everything to a Google Sheet, because obviously getting an email every single time there's an error, it can get a bit tiring. So having something like a Google Sheet where you can keep track of all the different errors that you had before is great. All right, and if you want this right here, plus some other notes that I've made about making your AI agents and workflows way more production level ready, then check out the second link down below, which will take you to my school community. You can go to Classroom, you can go to Templates Vault, and you will see under the n8n templates, the latest video, to say download n8n automation blueprint, and you can do the step-by-step guide as well. And if you apply and you get in, you also get access to the n8n full masterclass, which is broken down into 6 different modules. I uploaded this on YouTube, but I also made it structured in school, so you can go through it step by step, and you can find it right here, alongside with the AI Automations 101 course, which is a course designed to take you from a real beginner in AI automation to someone who's actually able to build automations for themselves or for other businesses. But the only disclaimer is that not everybody gets in. So please put some thoughts into your answers and I'll see you on the inside. So I hope now you got to understand exactly how you can make your AI agents and workflows way more durable, scalable, and actually production ready so they don't break. And check out this video up here where I show you exactly 8 n8n hacks to build better AI agents inside of n8n that I wish I knew when I got started. With that being said, I hope you found value from this video and I'll see you in the next one.